Good evening, everybody. Episode, what are we up to? 74, 1974, the year before I was born. Wednesday, the 8th of June. So what's been happening? It's an interesting question because there's a lot and there's very little at the same time. So in Melbourne, Demons World, we're starting to spiral. What's going on? Back from the snow, another loss to the Sydney Swans. To be expected, I actually thought myself. I'm not sure what all the fuss is about. But anyway, we've had a big week, and they say a week's a long time in football. So let's have a chat to the boys and see what's been going on. Righto, cuz. Tell us how it is, mate.
Mate, there hasn't been a lot going on, but as you did say, there seems to be a lot going on. The beautiful thing about living in Melbourne, sporting capital of our country, and in our world, we think it's the sporting capital of the world, on a day when the interest rates have gone up and that will affect thousands of people, the first thing they talk about is a punch-on between two Melbourne footballers. So that's an indication of what's important in Melbourne's world. I'm sure when Lovey comes on, we'll discuss that a fair bit. Mate, like a lot of people at the moment, I'm suffering terribly from the flu, man flu, and being a brave soldier that I am, I am fighting on, but I'll touch on it a bit later in the Cousins Classic, mate. We'll go into a bit more detail then. Good week, though. Midweek, hump day, as they say. Big State of Origin game going on as we speak between the Maroons and the Blues. Haven't checked the score, so it won't be a spoiler alert. Love to see the Maroons get up, but they've become, I suppose, the underdog a bit now with New South Wales becoming the more informed side in recent times. So, yeah, we'll see where that goes. But a lot to discuss, as you said, mate.
All I'd say to you is hang in there because the dream team of coaches has arrived. It's going to change. The time's going to change. Times are changing. Speaking of times are changing, here he is, Alan Love. How are you, Lovey?
Good, mate. So, Glenn, you're essentially calling yourself a warrior because you're battling through the man flu, mate. Is that what you're calling yourself there? You're a survivor. Mate, I tell you what, I would rather you sit 100 feet behind me when I'm going into war. Sounds like to me you would let go of my hand pretty bloody quick if we went over the trench. You'd mere whiff of dirt stuck in your eye, you'd be crying out for the pretty little nurse with the red cross on saying, hey, help me. Mate, it's man flu. We all get it. In fact, I haven't had it for so long because you know why? Cuz I look after myself. You need to start looking after yourself, starting with a brand new wardrobe. What did you do? What's happening in the background there? Did you blow up your own wardrobe or something? All I can see there, I can't work out if you're going to be a lawn bowler, a cricket player in the middle of June. Good luck with that. And I'm still trying to work out what's behind the sheets. I'm going to release that at podcast 75, by the way. The responses I've received to what's behind your sheet is astounding, to say the least. Apart from that, things are going all right. Things aren't too bad. Had a car accident last Saturday trying to get from the football to netball and back to football, and I have no car for 2 weeks. So if anyone knows of a very cheap car hire place, let me know. The only thing I draw the line at is something before 1990. That's it. But yeah, good to be back on again. 74, 2 years before I was born, so I've got you. Cuz was about 25 by then, so that's pretty cool. Apart from that, all good. Chortle.
Thanks, Al. So good to see you got your rant out the way early, mate. So you're done for the night now?
No, I'm not. On that point, when I officially lose it on this podcast, when Aaron allows me to lose it, interest rates are the least of our worries, of which I will smash between the eyes.
Righto.
Lovely,
Fair
man.
to say,
Beautiful.
Lovey's come beautifully in on the long run and hasn't missed anyone on his intro in. So, well, you didn't really address me though, Lovey. So I'm pretty proud that.
There's plenty for you in the next hour.
You're saving
There's plenty for you in the next hour, trust me.
I'm tipping you might cop a bit, mate, or the side that you support might cop a little bit.
Righto. Tonight we're going to release the discussion about 1974 was the release of the electric Jaffle iron, which changed our world. Given that I was born the next year, I never knew anything other than. But it was. I did come across the old clamp style one that you put in the fire too many years later, which I absolutely still love. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's play our famous number 74s to kick off. '74. It was a big year. So much happened. I had to just jam a fair bit in there. But who would have thought the Post-it note was invented in '74, still around?
Yeah.
I'd hate to think how many little Post-it notes we've sold over the years. Or I would love a cent for every Post-it note.
Yeah, it's one of those, Glenn. Yeah, that's right. It's good. Is that from 1974, that one, mate?
The original colour too.
It is. It is. No pun intended, but Jody used it, and it's one of those silly inventions that is so practical, and everybody at some stage has used.
Sure have.
Yeah, I was. Go, mate.
The Rubik's Cube as well. Seen many a household the old Rubik's Cube, for sure. There's
a lot of muscle cars were obviously that might have been the start of the muscle car era back in '74. And was that the first ever Celica?
It must have been pretty close.
Possibly, yeah.
Yep.
Never finished the Rubik's Cube. Never have. As everyone knows, I've got the temperament that probably doesn't last that long or something like that, or the patience. But the other thing I was struck by is that Glenn wears still half of the stuff that was on that montage. It was magnificent.
Beautiful. Even the hairpiece, cuz you've tied him.
Take off your cap, mate.
No, Lovey and I have given up on the hairpieces. That's for sure.
We have.
And one last thing that was invented then, well, two things that stood out for me was the invention of the barcode. Hasn't that changed our life?
Yeah.
And turned into obviously the QR code later on, but the barcode's still very much a piece of today. So hard to believe it was 1974. That was first.
Did you have any of Richard Nixon in there?
There was a Richard Nixon in there.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I must have missed it. The biggest political scandal of all time, I'd suggest.
Yep, absolutely.
I will resign. Tricky
Watergate.
Dicky, but the thing with Tricky Dicky, just touching on him for a minute, he, similar to Joe Biden and him coming in after Trump, Biden's been around, some may say, like a bad smell for a long time. Richard Nixon was the same. He's sort of first contested the presidentship, for want of a better word, back in 1960. He was running against, there was a photo of JFK and the montage that as put up before. So Nixon he wasn't liked when he lost in previous attempts, and then when he got in, we all know how well that went with the famous Watergate Hotel. And I still think that's one of my favourite scenes out of the Forrest Gump movie. when Forrest is at the hotel, he goes, "Excuse me, there's a light on the hotel. I think someone left the light on." Like, just, and he just said, "Lovely, one of the most amazing things in the world's political history."
I think he was portrayed brilliantly in Point Break, 1992 version, with the mask on.
Yeah.
That's my favourite version of Tricky Nixon.
Tricky Dicky.
Yeah, and the other thing that came out of 74 was the first time the Heimlich maneuver was brought into reality in a method to stop choking. So we might...
Ever done it?
No, I haven't actually had to do it, thank God, but I think Cuz has earned himself a new nickname with the Heimlich, being a choker that he is. So anyway, we'll move on. Now,
I like that. Drop the bomb, then move on. No, thank you. No right of reply.
No,
that's
no
okay.
chance to reply. Beautiful.
It's okay.
Yep.
The drive-by. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it works, doesn't it?
Just relax. Okay, we don't talk to one another like it's okay.
It's not okay. In fact, Ray, it's not okay. I've decided it's not okay at all.
Bring back Ray. How far away is Ray? He's got to be soon back, surely. All right. One I wanted to touch on with you guys that I'm sure you will know about. If you don't know about this one, the Battle of Windy Hill, classic brawl between Richmond and Richmond and the Bombers, which was absolutely crazy, including a little 6-year-old in the crowd there that was getting right in the middle of the blue, which is very interesting. So it was a halftime special, I think, from memory, boys. What do you know about this the blue?
Cuz, what are your recollections of that as a young adult?
I was only 4. And look, I reckon Dad's probably started taking me to the footy maybe that year or the year after. I can't remember being at the game. I remember talking to Dad about it, and the funny thing about it was Rex Hunt was playing for Richmond at the time, I'm pretty sure, and Barry Grinter, who played for Western, they're both coppers. But obviously, they're normal jobs, and back then they were footy part-time and had sort of full-time jobs. Just hilarious. Like some pretty famous names. Graham Richmond, who was an icon of Richmond, was involved. Punch On. I think Ian Stewart, who was Brownlow medalist at St Kilda and Richmond. But yeah, the funny thing is when you speak to people about it, is that how does a 6-year-old kid just wander on the ground in the middle of a melee? And if you look at that picture again, as if you pop it up again, when you see photos of the kid, no one's caring about the kid. The kid's just, normal Saturday afternoon.
Just out there for an autograph.
Yeah. Funny.
Here's a fun fact. My favorite local football coach I played under of all time in my career was a guy called Stephen Parsons. Now he was a young 17-year-old Richmond footballer in that particular scenario, and he started the whole thing. I think as a 17, 18-year-old kid, and when you watch the video back of the whole thing, you see he started, and then in the bottom left, it is Grinter from Essendon literally chasing him out of shot, away from the whole thing, and the two of them went hammer and tong anyway. But it's not something he's proud of. It's interesting because I spoke to him years later, when I was under his wing, and great man. Loved his footy, coached really well, very hard man, as you can appreciate. But it's not something he's proud of, and he reckons both sides are probably, it's not something they like to actually recall too much. Even Big Mel Brown never really liked the way he was portrayed in that whole thing, and it was. I think that was probably one of the worst brawls you'll see ever in football.
Yeah, scary part is, you had kid out there, officials out there, as Sam quickly touches on. Get out of Sammy. Sorry to hear about the trials and tribulations you're experiencing at the moment. Get well, Marnie, who's finally come down with the dreaded COVID. So a little bit of turmoil in your house this week. But he does, he'll be back. Don't you worry. Sam's back, ready to roll in the next few weeks. And just a shout out to Gooch is doing a bit of traveling, and he's over in New Zealand. He's doing about 7 cities in 6 days or something crazy like that, 6 cities in 7 days. And he's obviously tuned into State of Origin time as well. Loves his he's actually still torn between to pick up AFL or to pick up NRL. So as a second favourite sport. So we'll have to convince him one way or another.
The interesting thing with that
last shout out to Robert Wine, who's always jumped on and says g'day to us. I think you've still got him covered, Cuz, a couple of years just before Robert. And Berkey's also very impressed that you started with a bang, Lovey. So it's good to hear. Good to hear. All right, boys. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, just with that, going back to that ball, there's some really absolute what we now call champions in the game were sort of playing in that game. Like, I think Gary Folds had just begun his career at Essendon. Tuddenham was coaching Essendon at the time. Simon Madden, and then from Richmond, Richmond were a powerhouse. Like they won, I think, 74, 75, won back-to-back. Sorry, 73, 74, and back-to-back flags. So, as Lovey said, different times as to compare it to today, but Richmond were the real powerhouse, whereas Essendon were probably in terms of success, or sort of a dark area. Like they would often go okay at home against the top sides, but very rarely made finals. If they did, it was elimination finals, and often went out in straight sets.
Yep, and don't forget another great bomber, Kenny Fletcher. He was out there too.
Yes, he was.
There have been some great bomber names over time, great Tiger names that have all gone on, and we've seen through the media over years. We've grown up, and that's how I kind of met or saw some of these guys, and then went back and saw some of their career and watched it on TV. And it was a very different game back then, as we know.
Actually, the funniest excerpt I ever heard from that was Mel Brown, and he spoke about KB, and he reckons KB, as soon as the fight started, KB already sucked down the cordials and the lemonades in the change rooms by the time I got in there. He had nothing to do with it. He didn't want any part of it, KB. Straight in there and had everyone's drinks on their behalf. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And Eddie Zammit pretty keen on the Tigers, mate. So don't worry, Eddie. Oh, as you know, mate, they're back. So I think Eddie's come out of the woodwork now that the Tigers are back. So good to have you on, Ed.
Queensland 6-4 up.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Thanks, mate. Disclaimer.
Don't care.
But just on that, now that you've busted that little egg open, great news, great start. We all like a good start, a good fast start. I watched the first couple of minutes of the game, and it was really, really high energy, which was really interesting. So I'm interested to hear if Yo is still on after he took a big hit in the first minute and was dazed. Very much so. So, Kerry, I'm sure will take a keen interest in that with Yo having a decent hit, being a concussion man and part of Stop Concussions. I'm sure he'd be concerned about how to leave those guys out there at that kind of time. He didn't even come off for a HIA head assessment or anything. It was just kind of kept going. So,
it's interesting. Before we jumped on, it's interesting. Sorry, Kaz. Andrew Johns made the comment, he stumbled. Shouldn't he be off straight away and not come back on?
Yeah.
So there's obviously a protocol involved. And the fact he stumbled, they're suggesting he shouldn't even be on at all. So interesting time.
I'd be surprised if there's not a little bit to hear out of that story now, because they're pretty, as they rightfully should be, they're pretty brutal on it now. The second anyone's got a little concern, they're straight off. So Origin time is a little bit different, as we've always known. But Origin's really changed now. It's become a game of skill and not a game of bust-ups and fights. So it's very much changed. And speaking of great nights and associated with footy, just to touch on this Thursday night while we've got it fresh, at Brunswick Ballroom to celebrate the recommencement of the Community Cup. There's a pie night, old-fashioned 4 and 20 pie night at the Brunswick Ballroom. And there's going to be a couple of bands playing there. Casanovas are playing. So if you can ever get there on a Thursday night, you're in for a massive treat with one of Melbourne's greatest. All right. Boys, I think we're going to kick to one of the things that happened during this week, and it's a concerning one, fair to say. Let's roll the tape and then we'll talk about it.
Can come through me. Oh, Zach's trying to go the headbutt in there, I think, and another little headbutt there from Haley Smith. I'm not sure whether it made contact or not, but there was a couple either way. Now, Bailey Smith has been reported here, and I think I did see it happen, but I think I saw one before that as well. Wowee! A little split on the forehead as well, but here it is. See the initial. Oh boy! Goodness gracious me! Double whack there, and both having a go at each other.
Now, can I just say to start this off, and then I'm sure, Lovey, you've got a nice little warm-up ready to go on this one. So I'm not sure if this was part of your loses it segment, but let's just touch on how influential that young man is right now on the kids watching the game. Fair to say it was a massive brain fade. The question is, did it look worse with the flick back of the mullet hair, or was there something else that provoked this? I'm just really interested in you both your boys' reaction and what kind of look that is on the game. Let's go with Lovey.
Provocation or not, should never have happened. Not in 2022. We just spoke about how State of Origin's changed in its concept, and it's gone from skill and speed away from brute mentality and the like. It just shouldn't have happened. He admits it. The problem I have is it was only 2 weeks. Now, there was clear contact made as opposed to last week where contact with Buddy and Cotchin was debatable. This one was absolute. Now, we don't condone punches. We don't condone anything else for very, very good reasons. Now, the AFL had a really good opportunity this week to really clamp down on this particular activity now, albeit it's the first headbutt I've seen in the AFL for a number of years. But it happened, and heat of battle or not, there's better ways of going about that. So for me, just should not have occurred. Does it impact kids away from football from that? Does it motivate the kids to go out and do the same? Well, I hope not, especially if you've tried being all local. He's doing the right thing as well, and you get a 4-week suspension for it, as you should. But let's forget about the whole role model thing for a second. And I get that it doesn't look great on TV, and there's this notion it's going to influence kids to go out and do the same thing, maybe. But that these kids have also got their own football clubs that surround them and make sure that they do the right thing. Most importantly, in the same anything else that happens, the behaviour of a kid always starts at home. So if your mum and dad tell you that's not the right thing to do, follow their advice. If your own local footy club tells you that is not the right thing to do, I think there's enough numbers around that for any kid over the age of, say, 14, 15 onwards up to adults, that's not the right thing to do. So Bailey Smith did the wrong thing, should he be, criticising the socials about being an influence on kids and all the rest of it? Maybe 5%, but not the bullshit that kids are being paraded out every time something happens. Everything always starts locally within your own community, in your own home. That's it.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you, Lovey. I think the AFL had an opportunity to back up their talk with the action that, look, there wasn't not a severe injury to Zach Tui, but it could have been a lot worse. So it was distinct, definitive, deliberate action. To me, as you said, 4 weeks. Well, 2 weeks for stupidity and 2 weeks for there's no need to do it. It wasn't a football act. No need to do it. I'm happy with the show of strength and the push and shove. I'm okay with that. But to do what he did, and look, I think Bailey Smith is a great player. Zach too is hard-headed as well, but there's no need to do what he did. And you heard a lot of people say in the media from current players, ex-players, whatever, there wasn't much in it. If he hits him like that in the head and hits him on the temple, as we all know, that can be fatal. Now, I know that's going to the zenith degree, but I think a headbutt is a headbutt. It's not something that should be a part of our game in any way, shape, or form. And to your point about the influence that it might have on young boys and girls, men and women playing at local level, whatever, watching that, I'm with you. It's the apple and the tree scenario. If you are brought up that is not acceptable in any sport, contact sport or otherwise, and if you choose to do that, well, then you will suffer, or you have to be prepared to suffer the consequences of making that choice. And I think, unfortunately, I don't think Bailey Smith's a dirty player. I think he had a brain fade, but I think the 2 weeks, I think he got off pretty lightly.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, let's leave that one there.
The only other thing I found offensive in that one is, and this happens a fair bit, young blokes just forgetting where they're at. And I'm being humorous here, but at the same time, Cody Waitman, you haven't had a kick all night, mate. You come in from behind, you try and rip his shirt while getting headbutted. Mate, seriously. Guys like Cody Waitman and little tip rats like Ginnivan got to go and get out and get your kick. Granted, Ginnivan's getting his 3 or 4 a game right now. He's playing like an absolute star. Credit to him. But for a guy like Cody, mate, you have not had a kick all night. Just go to the huddle, listen to your coaches, and just try and do better for your team. Don't get stuck in all that sort of rubbish because you look like a loser, big time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if Davey Cosma's green lighting this or he wants to see it, but the old Liverpool kiss, mate.
Excuse
was
me.
back with a vengeance there. To talk about a brain fade, there's no doubt. So I'm not even sure how he was playing or what was going on or what even sparked it. But yeah, you don't lead with the head, mate. That's fair to say. You're right, cuz that could have easily ended up pretty ugly. Split head, hit him in the side of the temple. Anything could have happened after that. So not a good look. Look, it hasn't been a great week, fair to say, for off-field scuffles. And I know Lovey's got an opinion on a couple of things that have happened recently, but you can't get much more bad timing than Melbourne's lost its second game in a row. Everyone's pretty keen to kick the boots in, as we know. And then we've got this happen. So, first of all, Stephen May should have been smarter than this. You're in a concussion protocol where you're supposed to be definitely not on the drink for starters. That's one issue. And you've got priors for this before at Melbourne and then previous to that at the Gold Coast. So super disappointing for starters. I think the next thing probably to cover off is you've taken on a guy that was an amateur boxer for starters, part of the team. Now, Jakey Melksham should have been smarter than that too. You just got your chance to play another game and very much were in the, I would say, was in the mix to play again this week. He's had a great game for the VFL and he really had his chance. That's going to put all in that. And I know they've both come out and said, well, mate, Stephen May, I'm not sure if Jakey Melksham agrees with this, but May did come out and say, mate, we're still mates. It was nothing to it. It was an overreaction. It's not a good look. The next step is I've heard that Melksham had to go and get his hand looked at through basically an infection. So you don't get an infection overnight. So that's obviously something's happened there as well. Just not a good look. And for someone like Max Gawn to have to come out and really put out this fire as quick as he can, it showed great leadership from Max, I must admit. He spoke very well on the whole story behind it. But not a good look. Not a good look for the game. That means a couple of weeks in a row we've had the Buddy incident, then the Bailey Smith one. Then we've had a massive event, obviously, at Etihad with the boxing on the weekend. And then this comes out overnight. So not a good look, fair to say. And well, not really what I was expecting to wake up to as a Demon supporter. So a little bit disappointing from the club's point of view. But we all move on. And as Max Gawn said, we look internally now as a club, and we will all be judged now on how we react come Queen's birthday. So your opinion first, Cuz. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one to have an opinion on because, as we said at the start, when you put up the thing about the 74 massive ball at Windy Hill, football's different now, even looking either internally or externally. I think because we live in a world now that is something happens, especially to people that we watch or see all the time and in the public spotlight, they are scrutinised to a zenith degree. They get all this education. As you said, unfortunately, Steve, I don't know if Stephen May comes across as a likeable sort of rogue, a pretty down-to-earth sort of bloke, but he's got prize for this. Now, am I saying the wheels have fallen off Melbourne? Not at all. I still think you're the best side in it, but it's amazing what other sides or other people use against you. So as you said, now the boots or the balls in their court as to how you respond. I think as a Melbourne supporter or follower, and I'm speaking sort of for Melbourne people here, I'm not a Melbourne supporter, I just think silly, just silly. Or, I don't know, stupid. Like from what I've garnished from different news reports and whatever, and a few people that have supposedly we saw it or whatever, I don't think, from what I can gather without wanting to lay blame, but it seems to be more towards Stephen May that he was the protagonist, for want of a better word, and Melksham felt he had to not so much defend himself, but defend others. That said, mate, you're not 15-year-old boys. You're grown men. You've been in the system long enough to know that actions like this have consequences, whether you're a cuz as or lovey. So that's the thing where I think that's probably the most disappointing thing, that with what's going on with how we act and how we are expected to act in society, that's probably the biggest thing. Obviously, they're footballers and they're high profile, but I think the worst thing is, as you said, watching Max Gawn tonight. Now, again, I don't know Max Gawn, but watching him have the press conference tonight or when he was interviewed, he wasn't happy. Like he said, they would deal with it, but I think it's something that, yes, as captain, you come across things in your time and your stewardship as captain, but he thought, look, we've lost 2 games. We need to get back on the winning list. This is the last thing I want to have to deal with. Now,
just on that, Cuz, dealing with it as a leadership group, which I believe dealt with it internally, to give that guy 1 week.
Look, to me, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching. To me, that behaviour, if you or I did it, we wouldn't get a week. There would be a lot more further consequences than the week. Now, I don't know what Melbourne have done internally, apart from obviously the suspension. But to me, as we just spoke about with the Bailey Smith thing, I think there could be more ramifications, or there should have been more ramifications. And I'm not saying that because I don't want to see Melbourne win. Not that at all. What we're trying to do as a society, we spoke about how the NRL are trying to improve how their games are played. AFL the same. To go out and do this, and then to sound blasé, he's probably very contrite in the way he's saying it, but to then say, "Oh, it's okay, mate, we're all mates now." Well, don't bullshit a bullshitter, mate. I don't think you're all mates. You have honest
You don't know that,
conversations.
Cuz, you don't know that, mate.
No, look, I don't.
We've blown off shit in our local clubs before, mate. We're not impeccable.
I think the comment that was said though, if there's any truth to this part, if you played in the grand final, we would have lost. Now that's a comment.
By the way, Max Gorner's come out. Max Gorner's come out and said that is categorically false. That particular comment.
Yeah, I would have thought so because I mean, you come out and say that in jest, mate. I don't care how pissed you are. That's not enough to have started a fisticuffs, right? So there's obviously more to that. But
this whole thing's laughable. This whole thing is absolutely laughable because all we're feeding is the media and all this shit. You know, this is an in-house thing for the Melbourne Football Club. Keep it there. You say that Maxi Gawn showed leadership. I agree, but only to feed the media. He should have just done what most people should have said. And well, it's in-house. It's for us to deal with. You can speculate what you like. I'm not making any comment on it. So shut up. What's disappointing is that he couldn't get the opportunity to talk about what he was actually there in the first place for. And that is a Freeze MND campaign.
Yep.
Instead, they spent 35 minutes on all this shit because of the parasitic media that can't help themselves, that love a good bite, clearly lost their own heart in the process by not worrying about it and talking about the Freeze MND campaign. So you can see where you can see where that was going, right? The media wanted to feed, and guess what? Once again, a club falls into it and tries to just fend it off as best they possibly can. You know what? Couldn't give a shit about what the media want. If you're properly going to deal with this in-house, deal with it in-house and keep it there.
Yep.
All right? If other people want to say certain things and different things, well, have a thick skin. Don't bother with it. Talk about the things you're meant to be there to talk about in the first place. So that's, to me, that's the most laughable aspect of this whole thing. Now,
can I be different for a second on that though?
Yeah, if you like, mate, I couldn't care less. Be devil's having a go for it.
No, and I'm not being smart. Just say Melsham waxed May, and as I said about the headbutt to Smith before, say he hits him on the side of the temple and kills him or maims him, whatever. Who deals with it then? Do Melbourne keep it in house?
The police, as it should be. Simple.
If you're an I'm like you. I do it like yourself. I've been around for a time.
It wouldn't matter. It does not matter if it's Melbourne Football Club and it's Avondale Heights. The fact of the matter is that confrontation happened. In the meantime, there's two things that can occur. First, just keep feeding this, and losing all your focus. Losing the focus of what you should have been there for in the first place for the press conference. But more importantly, it becomes a potential police matter. There are actual jurisdictional requirements around this. So fuck the media. Don't worry about the media. And don't worry about people wanting to make commentary around the culture of a football club. Right? It is the most laughable thing I can find in football right now. Is every single week the media tries to find something and everyone falls into it. Stop. Don't worry about it. Don't bother with it.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Right. I think we've said our piece. We're giving that to, like you said with the media, keep it out of the media. We've probably given it way too much airtime, but I think it was important that we had a chat about it.
By the way, your club is fine, mate. It is still fine. There's no, if anything, it's probably going to provide them a new resolve. They'll get this shit together. They'll win the premiership in the second half of the year. I don't think there's any issues.
Some really interesting things to just touch on and think of how the Demons are travelling compared to where other teams were. 2019 Tigers lost 3 games in a row and were 7-6 after 13, right? Round 13. The Eagles in 2018 were 10-1, lost 3 games in a row. These are teams that all won the premiership. Tigers in 17 lost 4 games in a row and were 7-5 after round 13. And the comment at the end was, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Absolutely. As we're a long way from September at the moment, and we get close to the bye at a pretty good position, I would have thought. So let's see what happens this week. I think that, who knows, could be the spark we need, the fire in the belly to beat the Pies. when we go into the bye, and then anything can happen after that. So, yeah, here we go. So what have we got, Lovey? Let's go with a little spoiler alert first. Spoiler alert. Righto. What have we got? What have we got?
Hang on. Can you give us that again, mate? That was gold.
No, don't do it twice, mate. Come on. What do we got?
Play it back.
Lovey.
School update.
It's half time, 6-4.
Okay. All right. Well, good. We get a couple more minutes to talk, and then we can go and watch the second half at some point. So I think we're going to run with I think you're on a bit of a roll, Lovey. So I think we're going to run with you, mate. So here we go with Lovey loses it. There we go, mate. Little visual. Last week.
It's a very interesting still shot. Thanks, mate. This one will be quick. There's two topics, but it'll be really very, very quick. 2 weeks, I think two potties ago, I think just before or just after our election, we spoke about the politicians and how much they lie, and nothing could be more truthful than what we're finding out in the last week or so. We've had an RBA that's hit families with a 0.5% rate today. That's on top of the 0.25 from the previous month. What that says to me is either the RBA are corrupt and they've allowed themselves to be corrupted by the previous government, and now all of a sudden they want to bump up the rates, or there's something else that's afoot with the Labor Party. Either way, one thing I've learned very, very quickly in Australia now, from a political perspective, is we clearly have no leadership anymore. And I don't care what party you go to, they're only in it for themselves. Their leadership is disgraceful. At no stage do I feel like that they're actually looking after the common person, which is their remit. They're meant to be serving us, not themselves. I find it hilarious that the likes of Angus Taylor's now Shadow Treasurer. There's still $780 million missing from Murray-Darling Basin as one example. And then you go to Victoria and there's rorts all over the place that everyone's heard about Slugate and the rest of it. The facts are there. They will come out. But broadly, all that says to me is I don't know who we can't trust anyone that's been given the opportunity and the responsibility of representing us both domestically and internationally. Everyone keeps telling me, "Oh, you got to give Albanese a go." Oh, cool, I will. You know, that's what we're about. We're all for giving people a go. But when they do things that displace our trust with them, they can't expect us to keep on going back to the well with them. So at the moment, I feel like our country's rudderless. So that's part one. Part two, and this is probably a bit more disturbing. And it was a case in point. Daisy Pearce, wonderful pioneer for women's football, wonderful pioneer for AFL football in general. Given a role at Geelong, a senior coaching role in the men's team at Geelong, you jump on the socials, and I tell you what, I felt like I was back in 1952. I just don't understand. And this isn't virtue. Well, you know what? If it's virtue signaling, I couldn't give a shit. But the misogyny across our society these days is still at a high level. And when we talk about domestic violence and the mental health issues that abound with that, it's not just the men, it's the women. So what a lot of men seem to forget, and I guarantee they're probably just covering for their own limitations in life, both mentally and physically probably. But, women suffer mental health issues as well. And so when you try and put them down the way that the misogynists do, it's just debilitating to read it. And I'm so glad that a Daisy Pearce can break through barriers. I'm so glad that we've got CEOs across Australia that can break down barriers. And as much as I hate our political system right now, I am glad that there's a lot more females that are representative, not just because of a quota. It's because there's more trust with the female population at the moment to represent us than there are the men. And there's a very strong reason for that, because the men let themselves down on a regular basis. So to the boys out there and the men out there, lift your game. If you've got limitations, you want to speak about them, don't cuss them off to the next available person, particularly women who are actually achieving things. There you go. We're done.
Well, that was great points there, Lovey. Let me see what's going on with that. Okay.
Really good, Lovey. Really good points, mate.
Am I echoing?
No, I think I am. All right, I think that's
No,
all right.
could have been. I've got a police helicopter over my roof right now. I don't know why.
Yeah, look, I think about the only good thing I've seen happen with the Albanese government right now is there's a fair few women that have been given an opportunity, fair to say. And I think exactly to your point, Daisy Pearce, from a sporting organisation point of view, is very much a pioneer in that space. She is in women's media as well. I think let's give them a crack. And we're all three of us are one for equality. And I think, it hasn't been an easy couple of weeks for the government, fair to say. But as a Demon supporter, hasn't been easy under Albanese, let me tell you either, with 2 losses to start off their campaign. So not a good start for us. Hopefully something changes there. But, it's fair to say I think this is years of frustration, Lovey, that we're touching on now. And coming out of years of COVID as well, it's concerning. So the concerning part I've got is what other secrets is being swept under the carpet from both political parties across the side, and what are we really going to find out, and how much impact's it really going to have?
And look, the one concern I've got is we've already got a treasurer who's blaming the previous government for things really, really quickly. I get it. You're 2 weeks in. You're outlining the things you're up against. Okay. You've got a honeymoon period of about a month, pal. You've got people that are on the breadline. You've got people under the poverty line more so than ever. Yep, not your fault, but guess what? You put your hand up to fix it. It's like a volunteer who just goes out and volunteers, does a really shit job, and then says, "Oh, I'm just a volunteer." Mate, even worse, charmers, you're getting well paid to do what you're doing. Find the solutions and fix it. Obviously work with everyone in the country based upon the topic at hand, but don't keep going back to the previous government for the next 3 years, for God's sake. The last thing we need is just a blame mentality. We've already got it. Get rid of it.
Yep. Yeah, fair to say that was always, no matter which side of politics, they blame that for the first 2 to 3 years and then hope something else changes. And, before you know it, they're trying to get a second term. So, the sad part is politics isn't an easy game. I wish we could just get better human beings involved in politics that had actually a lot better information to give and not just play the political war against each other. So, Kaz, what's your thoughts, mate, just before we move on?
Look, I think that's probably the most frustrating thing is, like, I know a couple of people have gone into sort of local level politics and they come out of it, unfortunately, jaded, because they go into the system with the best laid plans of mice and men, and for whatever reason, as you said, they get caught up in that cycle and they come away thinking, shit, why is it that hard to make a difference? And in the end, they end up just being another number and part of the wheel. And as you both said, look, I'm about the same. Look, I voted Labor, but again, I heard a comment the other day from the previous government saying, that's Albanese's job now, which is true, but when you're in opposition, you're meant to give an alternative. As you said, Lovey, when you're in government, you've got to live and die by the sword, so to speak. So have the balls to try to change things. But you watch both parties, whether it's from a state or a federal level, and you think, are you people actually acting on behalf of me and my fellow countrymen? Are you acting on behalf of yourselves? And that's probably the most frustrating thing. And just watching the news tonight, like, I'm going to be totally honest, Joe and I was sitting there just before dinner watching the news, and we turned it off because you listen to the 4 banks. Like, I don't know, many people have got thousands of dollars in the bank account sitting doing nothing, and they say, oh, well, it's okay, it won't happen that quick. But as it said, like, I don't know the amount of years, but the rate rise to go up as quick as it's done, and they reckon it's going to be another one for at least the next 2 years. And then one economist from one of the banks said, oh, yeah, but we're going to taper it off by 2023. There's people living on the breadline at the moment or below that.
Yep.
And that's,
we touched on last week in our initial discussion in relation to mental health. It's scary what we're thinking about now and what we're going through, and it's not all doom and gloom. Let's not go down that line, but it's concerning, and it's concerning for a lot more people than we are giving it credit for. I think is the concern I've got, and a lot of people that don't fess up and say they're struggling or have trying to, we just got to get through this little period and it'll be okay. This is a long period here, and I've already had warning shots from people much kind of older than me that say, we had interest rates at 17%. Now, I'm not saying that's where we're heading, but it's scary, kind of just a couple of rises, what impact that can have. So I would say to you is make a couple of phone calls, call some people you haven't spoken to, just see how they're traveling and see, hopefully they're staying away from the bad news stories effectively and get around some good news stories and some good people to touch on. And one of those good people are the Cronin Foundation with Matt and Robin and the great things they're doing for the Pat Cronin Foundation. So we wanted to touch on that as well, especially with these issues in relation to violence and one punch and all that story. Sadly, they lost their son, Pat, from a one punch attack after it. Could have been easily, it's the same situation as we talked about before with May and Melksham. So anything can happen there. But the good news is they're trying to stop it. Let's try and rally together and stamp that kind of thing out. Now they are having a fundraiser ball to raise money so they can continue to do some great work at local clubs and go around and talk to young kids about the impact in society that can have. So if ever you can check that out, Pat Cronin Foundation is what you're Googling to check that out. All right, Cuz, we're going to move on to the classic.
Cuz's Classic.
I promise you.
I love it. Their budget is just, obviously, it's an open checkbook, really. It's fantastic, mate, the work you've done with the graphics for both my little segment and Lovey's.
Pretty similar to your background that you're working with there, mate. So
exactly right. No expense spared, mate. Exactly.
Right.
Blame the RBA, mate. So the classic I've gone to today, obviously, I touched on when I spoke to you guys pre-podcast today. I have the flu, which a lot of people in the country are obviously experiencing at the moment, and being a bloke, and as Lovey said, not being the hardest man going around, I'm struggling a little bit with the flu. So I went back into the archives and being, according to you blokes, born in 1955, just went back and sort of spoke about some of the old wives' tales and whatever remedies that people would use for the flu or the common cold, as it used to be called more so back then. And as the diagram comes up now, the graphic comes up now, the old Vicks Vapor Rub. Vicks Vapor Rub was a bit like the Windex in my big fat Greek wedding. It fixed everything. I remember Mum when I was a young child, she'd rub that on my belly when I had a cold, had a stiff legs, arms, or whatever. If you had a bit of a stomach ache, often you'd get that a bit with a cold, you weren't feeling the best. You had to change your diet straight away, and as you saw there on the diagram, you then had to eat either Salada biscuits or premium biscuits without any butter or any Vegemite. That's all it was. You had to have a nice big bowl of soup of some description, hopefully a vegetable soup or the chicken noodle soup there from Campbell's there. You'd spent the day on the couch. You wouldn't be able to go to school, and you'd be watching afternoon television. That's how you got better. It wasn't. My mum and dad were pretty old school that you wouldn't go to the doctor. They knew the better answers because their parents had passed on down to them. What are your thoughts, boys? Any sort of old-fashioned remedies that your parents passed on to you, or even your grandparents, what you would use to sort of get yourself better and to deal with the cold or the flu?
Yeah, my mum swore by this particular remedy when I was a kid, and yeah, it's an irresponsible serving of alcohol issue back in our day now. But so we used to have this remedy. Mum would put a tiny bit of gin in with some green ginger wine, some lemon, some honey, stirred in some hot water, and it was like a hot drink. So the green ginger wine and the rest of it, it made you deliberately sweat your cold out. So what would happen? You have the drink, then you get into your flannelette pajamas, then you deliberately go into bed and you head off to sleep. Because at the age of 10, let's face it, if you have an alcohol, you're probably passing out anyway. So anyway, that was a hilarious remedy, but it actually worked because I can guarantee you I didn't feel like I had the flu literally hours later. I'd sweated it out, went out in a good shower, Ingot dread, and I felt a lot better than what I had. The only other one I probably reckon I'd go to would be Mum reckons, and it worked at Charm. Used to have cod liver oil, except in the out of the container, not a tube like last week's trash, but it was in the container. You put it on a big tablespoon, and once a month you had to gulp down some cod liver oil, and it was the most disgusting thing I reckon I still today have tasted apart from pumpkin. It was just horrific. Yeah, on your side, Sal.
Appreciate your kind words, Sotel.
One thing that my mum always did when I was younger was a little bit of Panadol stirred into the strawberry jam. And that was an absolute winner. I was never one. Never one for capsules. Never one for capsules or trying to swallow capsules and all that. I remember as a young kid why this strawberry jam was so good. It always made you feel better. And now I know the secret. The little tablet of Panadol crushed in. So that got me through. But yeah, right. Sotel, suck it up, cuz.
Fantastic.
Right?
Thank you, Sotel.
We're all part of the disease.
Great to put in front of the show. I'd just like to make a toast to you both, boys. If you could put up, I've got another photo to show there. I couldn't get hold of the Nile decongestion. I went to school with a bloke many years ago. His name was Nile. So you can imagine the sort of comments that he got as a kid. So I'll just get rid of this for you. And as you said, Lovey, like the cod, I was convinced that my mother and father were trying to poison me whenever they gave me cough measures because it never made me feel better. And even when you can see them now, they go, oh, yes, lime flavoured or raspberry flavoured. It still tastes like shit. So I'm a bit of a fan of I'm a big fan of the Soother. The old Soothers, Anticols, those sort of things. But just talking about the flannel jammies and being warm, like you get the Vicks, have the hot bath, then you get the Vicks, then you get the flannel jammies on, and then because your parents are obviously trying to kill you off or burn you to death during the night, they pop you in your bed with the electric bracelet, and Dad being Dad the jeweler, good friend of the show, he'd say, whatever you do, son, don't piss yourself in bed because we wouldn't be able to get in time to save you. Oh, nice. Fantastic. Oh, nice. And good luck with the cold recovery, by the way, too.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point. You brought up an interesting point before, Lovey, with the green ginger wine. And I do have to give a quick shout out to Lukey Sinclair, who had a song that had those exact lines in it in relation to green ginger wine, mate. So you're going to have to look that up. It's on Bandcamp. It's a cracking song from his old band called Raising Eagles. And just
play it in front of my mum.
While we're chatting about
in front of my mum next time I see her.
While we're chatting about Luke, this Saturday night at George Lane, we've got Cold Irons Bound as support and then a Luke Sinclair set. So that's a must. Get out June 11 if you can get there Saturday night. It will be a cracker.
So there you go, boys. That's the class today. I knew, obviously, you blokes being that half generation younger than me, as you like to tell me. But yeah, the whole cold remedies, all the used to things we used to try, and the other one that my mum still says it to me now when we get to catch up with her, and when I take the boys down, Jack and Lucas, she always says, "Oh, you need to get something. It's cold. You need to have something that sticks to your ribs. You need to get something that's going to stick to your ribs. So in the cold weather." And I'm thinking, just trying to think of that concept. Well, I'm pretty sure you eat your food, you digest it, and we all know what happens. It comes out. I'm thinking, what? I'm trying to understand the sticking to the ribs concept. And she goes, "Oh no, it's just good for you. Just good for you." Okay, Mum. But she's 81. She's 81 and going okay still, so she must know more than me.
Yeah, you just got to ask her what is actually sticking to her ribs.
Exactly.
I can tell you one thing that I love. I love the old Vis Vapor Rub, mate. Still love it today.
Mate, it was the best.
I've still got a little bottle that sits in my car and give it the old smelling salts in the morning. It's a great way to get through, mate. I love it.
I had to have the thing. I had to stick something else up my nose. So it was. I preferred the nasal thing. That
Yeah,
was uncomfortable for me.
I was never found the nasal thing. I was a bit like you, Az. It's a little bit of Vicks down the nostrils, like. But
Putting things
it
up my
made you
nose
feel
was
so
always
warm.
good back then.
Sorry, mate?
Putting things up my nose back when I was about 18 or 20 was always a good thing. Vicks was no different.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly. All right, boys, it's time.
Oh, no.
What I started the segment with was the birth of the electric Jaffle line. So we do have to flick through a couple of these. We're going to quickly touch on a few things. But one, there's a few things we need to discuss in relation to, like our dim sim discussion that we had that got a heap of great feedback, mind you. We do have to cover this off. We probably should have kicked off the show, but why not an hour in? We can start it again. We're going to kick off with the texture and the bread. What are we working with here? What do we start with? How strong is the color? How brown does it get? Or how cooked is it before you decide that's enough? What's the filling is another obviously discussion. And then is it how do you cut it? Do you cut it or do you just pull it apart? And there's the old school method, which I absolutely used to love. And to me, this cries winter camping when you can have this out in front of a fire and you've pulled out a successful version of these Jaffles, you are the king for sure. And one thing I never gave credit to was the savoury Jaffle. I can't say I've even been a fan or even tried this, I must admit, but it's going to get a hotting. It's going to give it a crack soon. So there we go. I got a couple of comments when we posted this, and one massive winner from Janine and also Hoggy, two friends of mine, were the spaghetti Jaffle. So that was a winner for sure. So let's kick off with you, Lovey. What's your favourite Jaffle filling for starters?
The favourite Jaffle filling's got to be cheese. It has to be up there.
What's the cheese?
And the thing is, you can put anything with the cheese. You can put anything with the cheese in it, right? Tasty, straight up, proper big block from Woolies, wherever you want to go. Plug out the Woolies, please sponsor this show. I think, hey?
Couple of slices.
Yeah, pretty thick as well, I think, to give it time to melt in and things that stick to the ribs, Glenn, to your point earlier. I think, I reckon that half of the block of cheese in two toasted sandwiches does the trick. So cheese is my favourite.
Okay, just on the cheese. Oh, we'll go with the filling first, Cuz. What's your filling?
Look, cheese is the good base, but I'm a bit of a fan of the old ham cheese tomato. But looking at that one you saw before, as with the hole, I can remember camping with the in-laws once. You've got the fire light, but it's not real light, and you bite into the whole one. Well, it's a bit like the old jam donut from last week. You soon learn that, I might cut it and lift a little bit of the hot air out before you go in it. But ham, cheese, tomato, closely followed by baked beans in a Jaffle.
Right. There's the old baked bean special. I can tell you one thing that holds a bit of heat is the old baked bean. You tie that into a Jaffle as well. I think one thing that used to get me was definitely tomato. If you get tomato in the old ham cheese tomato, that tomato, I guarantee, is going to come out right at the wrong spot and burn the hell out of your lip. The baked bean, as I said, mentioned before, is a drama. The spaghetti has got issues with the sauce flying out like the hot jam donut. So there's issues all around here, but you can't beat the whole straight up ham and cheese, in my opinion. And I was also the fan of the one that's got the cross through it, effectively like this. They've got to come out like that, in my opinion, not just the straight two-piece toast sandwich. That was too old school for me. But the round one was the winner. If you ever got your hands on the round one that cut the crust off, that was where it's at. So bread's the last piece, the missing piece or second missing piece. I was an old classics, just straight up fresh white bread for me, but it does cause an issue when you go fresh white bread is the ability to butter it was next to impossible without causing a massive hole in the bread. So, righto, Lovey, what's your bread of choice now that you're 40 plus? What bread sits in your cupboards?
So, and this will lead on to some further condiment conversation in the next minute or so, I presume. But I actually don't mind the multigrain. The multigrain actually holds pretty well. Doesn't create holes, and the texture on it, I love it. And ever since I shifted to multigrain, I've never ever had a spurter, if you like. So my worst ever experience with baked bean sandwiches is I held it too hard. As I went to bite in, the hot sauce from the baked beans one time went straight up my nose, and it was just worst thing in the world. So multigrain for me, that'll do. It's good. It's good.
Yep.
Look what
for me.
Fresh white bread is beautiful, but I'm a bit the same. Multigrain or wholemeal because it keeps it together. Like you don't want. Unfortunately, you said about the tomato. Like in the tomato juice, you wouldn't think tomatoes are that juicy, but when you squeeze and when it hits you on the tongue or the lips, that burn lasts a fair while, and then it takes away the enjoyment of the rest of Jaffle, regardless of what the filling might be. So
that old comment. Let's try it again. Still there going. Hang on. We'll get there.
Oh, no. Where's the producer?
Dramas.
Am I looking at him?
All right, try again.
Do you want me to go again?
Yep. Hang on.
Instead of trying to get this thing up.
No, I'm trying to fix the audio. Right, we've got lots of. Are you guys getting the same audio bounce back?
Yeah, bit of bounce back.
Right, hit your mute buttons. No, it's not really working for us. All right.
No, but it's like you said, I'm all about the whole meal. Love the whole meal, and I've become more whole meal and multigrain sort of on normal sandwiches and rolls now, as opposed to your old style white bread. Like, and I think the fancier breads like your ciabatta and your Vienna loaf and that sort of stuff, they're a bit too hard to get into the standard size Jaffle maker.
We've spoken about this. Have we increased our since we became one of our? So I'll go first. Eggs, bacon, mushrooms, avocado. Wow.
We're going to have to lose you, Lovey. Just come back in, log back in.
That's very, very true.
Jeez, that was disastrous.
What's your most extravagant Jaffle you've had, mate?
I don't know if this goes down as extravagant.
Yep.
But as far as fillings, you can't go past this.
Oh.
You know how you talk about burn?
I'm laughing, mate, because we had... Oh, that's terrible. We had corned beef the other night, and as one of my mates said when I told him I was cooking corned beef, he said, any meat you have to steam normally doesn't end up quite well. And it's a bit like the old braised steak that you saw there. It's not a word you hear used that often today. What you have for dinner? I had a bit of braised steak with my vegetables.
All right, hopefully this is better. Not really.
Almost it's not.
How are you, Lovey? I'm not getting any feedback now. What about you?
You hear me echoing?
No.
I can hear myself echoing.
Which is, I heard it before, talking, thinking, I'm not enjoying this.
No.
You'd think after 74 episodes you could get it right. Good point, Robert. The class has risen once again, mate.
What a disaster.
Can we go back to Robert's comment then? Lovely, I think.
What was that?
Cuz is the only one not echoing, so maybe just make the show about me. Probably the best thing to do now.
Well, Cuz isn't the only one was kicked out, so let me kick you back out.
Yep.
Try and get you back in, because I do want to have this quick footy chat.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, apologies for that audio drama. We're just going to get the boys to log back in, and hopefully things are okay. So we've only got a couple of minutes to go. I think the audio gods aren't with us at the moment, but we should end up with a score check somewhere here along the way. All right, so we're gonna see. Obviously, the jokes are starting now with the logins. Mr. Echo, he's back.
Is this better?
It's absolutely perfect. So I think it might be just something on your laptop. And we
Yeah,
mentioned this that happened last time, but for some reason, when that starts and it starts going circling around, it just gets worse. So,
Cuz back on now.
Cuz. Now we've got Cuz.
I like your work, Alan. Very nice.
Is Cuz echo?
Righto. Go, Cuz.
I was just saying, Lovey, echo. Nice.
Perfect. All right. I think we're back. Let's do the last couple of minutes and look at a quick score update. Queensland 16 to New South Wales 4. Now, all I can say is this is a massive upset given where things were at in the current standings. So all I'd say is the three dream team coaches that I called at the start of this, Billy Slater, Cameron Smith, Jonathan Thurstons, look out. The game and the series is well alive. And if Queensland are winning game one so far, let's not jinx this, but game one right now in Sydney, mind you, fingers crossed, we can hang in there. It might be Lovey, you touching and going with Queenslander at the start in your name for this today. Me with the maroon on. And Cuz, you are a Queensland boy, right? We're going with Queensland.
Oh, mate, I love the Queensland boys. Yeah, I hate New South Wales.
You're going to say that now we're winning anyway, so get on it, mate.
Oh, no, look, the way that Queensland speak about Victoria as opposed to how New South Wales speak about Victoria, pretty obvious I'd be supporting, mate.
I was just going to say, would New South Wales look a lot different if they had a certain Josh Adokar out there tonight?
Well, that's a very interesting point. That sadly, not great timing. And I'd love to know the reason, but also think about Pappenhausen not being there either. This is really interesting to see what happens game two, fair to say. So it's awesome that the series is alive and it wasn't going to be another New South Wales whitewash, which they were hoping for. Now, in saying that, we had years of domination through for Queensland, so New South Wales did deserve a little bit of goodness. But as people will say, what was that?
Since when did New South Wales deserve a bit of goodness?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Good point.
Good point.
Let's not give them too much.
Hey, can I just touch on, boys? And I know, look, I'm aware of the NRL. I know you blokes follow it a fair bit closer than I do. Can we just touch on the two coaches who got their marching orders pretty quick succession this week? Now, being an AFL town, it didn't get touched on much down here. What were your thoughts on that?
Oh, they're more ruthless than what we are here.
Yeah,
Yep.
Jared Waitley on 360 last night Robbo goes, and to his credit, Robbo said, look, I don't know much of NRL. And Jared Waitley said, basically words that effect. He goes, no, they when you're gone there, you're gone.
Yeah, if any club can top a player mid-season too, it's a ruthless game, mate. So, it's always been an interesting one of mine to hear about mid-season trades, and then all of a sudden 6 weeks later you can be playing at a different club. So, I think that's an interesting part of the game, a unique part of the game, fair to say. But obviously, a coach that couldn't commit, which was the Warriors coach. Sadly, he couldn't commit when they moved back to New Zealand. So, left him real no other option. So I don't think that one was a massive surprise. So, coaching his son, I think, is an interesting one. Obviously with Penrith. So it will be interesting to see how that pans out over the years. Especially, there's other potential options of that happening at different clubs in the next couple of years. So
we may have touched on it before, but back in the sort of at least the sort of mid-70s, maybe a little bit later, you could transfer VFL clubs as well mid-season.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? Is it too difficult now with the state of play with the AFL, or is it something they should possibly look at?
This needs a new podcast. This needs a different podcast, this topic, mate.
Okay.
Yep.
All good.
It's a great discussion, and I think we should have it a bit more of a round table with some more AFL heads. We'll get Sammy on. We'll get Justin Nunn on. We'll get some other people that love their footy. We might even get your
Baggy
old mate
shorts.
on, mate. Yep. We might try and get Big Shorts on and have a chat about, especially that in AFLW circles. So put that on the list for Chase Downs, who we're going to talk to. So, all right, let's move to this week's AFL footy, boys. And I've changed a little bit of a change up so we can actually see it on the screen while people are looking at our beautiful faces. So it's taken me a long time to get this worked out, but we got there in the end. So this week we kick off, boys, with Thursday night football. The Tigers versus the Port Adelaide Power. What's your thoughts?
If Richmond are building to something and they're feeding them with the kind of build, they win this by 5-6 goals.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. If Richmond are the real deal, right now's the time they've got to show it against Port. It is here. That's the advantage. Port aren't great here, let's first say. So, Cuz, what's your thoughts?
I'm going Port for the same reason. They think they are the real deal, so they need to start winning games like this away from home. Simple as that. So I think Port by 15 points.
Wow.
Okay. I think the Tigers get them by 5. It's going to be close, I reckon. I reckon Port are close enough to give them a crack. Let's see. It's all going to be a little bit weather dependent. A little bit dewy, a little bit fresh. Richmond are good, but I reckon Port are going to come with a bit of a bang, and Richmond are still just going to get them. So, all right, let's move to the big one. Now, it's a big one for a lot of reasons, but if you're an Essendon supporter, you've probably half ridden this one off, but you'd love to put a little kick in the road for the Carlton Blues too, because I know they're a big rival from many years ago. So if Essendon's not travelling well, they don't want to see Carlton travelling well either. So what's your thoughts, Lovey?
If people thought I hate politicians, I hate Carlton even more. I really, it to be, if you make finals, as long as you beat Carlton both times a year that you played them. I just, for our 150th year, I really hope we put on a good show. I think we will. I'll back them in. I think we and they don't owe the supporters anything. No one owes anyone anything in this sport. It's just a sport. But for the love of the club, I really hope we get up and get an upset here. So I think, for our 150-year celebrations, I know Carlton couldn't think of anything better than upsetting our celebrations and all that crap. But excuse language, fuck them. We're going to get up and win by 8 points and really upset the top 4 chances too.
Yep. All right. Cuz, no doubt where your allegiance is with the Bombers. Let's declare that early. Everyone knows that. But what's your thoughts?
I think I'm with Lovey too. I think make a statement, boys. Like nothing better than obviously the chances of us making the finals are very, very remote. So let's start marking up a few sides on the way home. Let's get a bit of momentum going towards the end of this year and then building for next year. I'm with Lovey. I say about 2 goals, 10 points, 10, 12 points. So let's go 12 points.
Yep. I think you're right, 100% right. That I think Essendon do need to treat every new game and every new round from now on as a final, but also as a test for them to just try and win quarter by quarter and just see what they can do to upset a few teams that are interested in playing finals or think they're going to play finals. As we know, Melbourne seems to be the hunted and will be the hunted, and rightfully so. So every team kind of wants to get up and at least beat them for the season. So I think we've got the same kind of issue here with Essendon now that are out, but want to still, as you said, bring some positives in for the year. So the question is, do you play the kids? Do you run what's supposed to be next year's team? It's an interesting thought, but we'll talk about that more kind of in the next coming weeks. So we move into Saturday, Super Saturday.
Just before we move into the next game, Aaron,
Yeah, mate. Yep.
I can't underestimate how proud I am of this club and the 150 years that it's popped up.
Yep.
You know, I've followed this club since I was a 4-year-old kid through my family. It's very much a generation-based club. Like, I can guarantee well over 60% or 70% of the supporter base, because it was family. And it's always been that sort of thing. And 150 years, you can barely think of any company, you can barely think of any other sort of institution, even globally, that's lasted as long as what Essendon has, and Melbourne and Geelong just before it. So just very, very proud of our footy club. Love them. They give us the shits, but, you know, despite all that, they always give you something to follow on a weekend in the winter months, and it's just been it's a wonderful thing, and I really hope the club has a great night, Saturday night, and all the rest of it, and the weekend to commemorate what is an amazing footy club.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here, mate. I think we've all got to love, and you can hear the passion and love in your voice, mate, that you're really truly hoping and praying that the Bombers can pull one out of the bag and just get. It's incredible what an uplift gives you when your team wins. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, I've almost been a different human being in the last 6-7 months after winning a premiership, mate. So after years and years of defeat and disappointment and concern, are we ever going to do it? I can tell you the element of surprise was the best thing in the world. So it's a great feeling, but it's so quickly you can be come back to earth, can't you? With a couple of losses, you think, oh, God, my team's shot here. What's going on?
And as Lovey said, ditto to what Lovey said. Sorry, mate. On the same, like from age 4, like in the year of that Bully show before, that's when I first started breaking for them, and for those first sort of 9 years of me following them, they won. I think they lost 2 or 3 elimination finals. Then 83, we got to the grand final. I thought, how good's this at age 13? And we all know what happened there. And Hawthorn taught us a new one. Then we had a bit of success. And then we went through what we've gone through in recent times. But it's like life. You stick fat when you've got a belief in something. And look, I'm extremely proud of the club. Look, they've made mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. So let's just enjoy and be proud of what they've achieved so far. And as Lovey said, look, it's as much as people either loathe them or hate or love them, they are good for the comp. And when the big clubs are up and about, the comp goes pretty well.
Yeah, and I think me growing up as a kid with an average Demon team, generally, you had to have a second and third team. And Hawks were my second team, Essendon my third. And boy, did I see some unbelievable battles between Hawthorn and Essendon over so many years there. So, mate, as supporters of that club especially, I just hear so many great memories of so many iconic names that have come out of the Essendon Footy Club and Essendon families. So Davey Cosner, who's another great friend of the show, massive Essendon supporter as well. And if you're, like you said, you stick fat, and if you're a true Bomber, you're a true Bomber, like I'm a true Demon, and you just ride your team And you're right. We do have some great times when we win, and we have some horrible times when we lose. But all should be forgotten come Monday morning, but sadly they never are, because you go to work and you cop a ribbing from your other mate that barracks for the opposition team, and that's all part of the sport and sport we love. So I don't know if we've crowed a little bit early here, boys, but New South Wales have made a bit of a comeback and are only a try down. So it's a little bit concerning halfway into the second quarter.
Thank you to our Channel 9. Thank you to our Channel 9 and our correspondents. I'll tell Kizak.
We crossed to the sidelines there. So who knows? Who knows what will happen? But Lovey, let us in if you see another try made and they even it up. All right, let's move into the last couple of games. We've got Saturday afternoon, 4:10. The shocking time slot, 4:10 on Saturday. The Dockers versus the Hawks. I think the Dockers have got to get it done.
Dockers by 50 points.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It could be a whitewash, this one.
Yeah, I don't think the Hawks have been too bad in the last couple of weeks. So I know it is over there. So the Dockers have just got to get it done. And speaking of stupid decisions, we do have to bring this one up as well. That happened in the last 24 hours. Is our man Frederick? I think that's him, isn't it? Frederick or something. Yep. Sadly, he made not another stupid decision, a stupid decision, and he's gone and got on the drink when he shouldn't have been drinking. So, look, they've just got to be better than that, I guess. As professional players, there's a lot of negatives around alcohol and football and those kind of things mid-season, during the season. I think professional athletes, they get paid enough money now to just not be on the drink during that period. So, I think he's been a great player in the last couple of weeks, and I think he can continue to be. If he pulls his head in and does the right thing, you're never away from the media, that's for sure.
Yep. Move on.
Righto, here we go. So we second last game, I think it is.
Should be six.
We've got a couple more. All right, Brisbane Lions and St Kilda at the Gabba, Saturday night.
Geez, you know what? The Dockers exposed a few things in Brisbane last weekend. Yes, it was over there, but I'm not liking Brisbane's work rate, right? Apart from probably Lockie Neal and a couple of others. I'm not convinced they're working as hard as what they need to be. I know they're sitting second, or third now, but I'm just not convinced. And I reckon this might be this is the sort of game I reckon if they want to classify themselves as a contender, these are the games to win. And I think the Saints are a chance of getting up by about 9 points here. I'm going the Saints.
Look, I watched Lockie Neal was on 360 last night, and just a couple of his comments. Look, I think as you said, Lovey, his work ethic is amazing. It's probably better this year than the year that he won his Brownlow. But I think too few are carrying the can for others. I know they've got injuries with Danaher and a few blokes out, but just their work rate, as you said, against Freo was not up to the standard that they want to get. And then last night, listening to Lockie Neal a couple of times, he said, "Oh, look, it is only round 11 or whatever it is. We will be right at the right time of year," which they probably will be. But when you start making those comments, it's almost like you're giving yourselves an out, which to me, I think it's a bit of that gives St Kilda a bit of a free hit. They've been very good so far. And they've got, I wouldn't say they've nothing to lose St Kilda, but it's a bit of a free hit and a chance to take a big scalp away.
Well, based on those comments, I'm going to go with St Kilda this week as an upset. I think St Kilda have got everything to gain and Brisbane have got a bit to prove. But I think Brisbane, you're right. I think Brisbane have backed off a little bit, and I think you want to be banking wins. We all know that. It doesn't matter what stage of the season is, anything can happen in the last 6 to 7 weeks. So you want to be banking wins. You don't want to be backing off. Good form is winning form, there's no doubt. So, let's see what happens. That's for sure. All right, let's move on to the next one. We have got North and GWS. Will anyone be watching this? 3:20 on a Sunday. That's the snooze hour right there.
How many Who Cares Cups do we want to have 1 year?
Let's go for a draw.
You know what? Let's just back Northing to get a win.
Yeah. I think
if you are a betting man and gamble responsibly, they are paying $5.10 at the moment for a win.
I reckon they'll get the win. They'll win
at $5.10, that's a good bet. As you said, gamble responsibly, because the other mob are just almost as disappointing.
Yep. All right, then we move on to Monday. The big clash, the Battle of the Titans. I can't tell you how many text messages I've had from Collingwood supporters that are right behind me telling me they beat Freo, we didn't beat Freo. The wheels are falling off during this week. It's all over for the Demons. Ironically enough, my daughter teaches grade 1, and she had a little student not in her class, but in her school, come up to her and said, "You're not going to come to school on Tuesday because you're going to lose. You're going to lose."
No.
And gave her the old go Pies. It's like, wow, they're an incredible breed, the Collingwood supporters. And talk about get behind their club. We talked about it, love for club and all that sort of stuff that we mentioned just before, but there's no bigger doubt, supporter, and Lovey, I'm a little nervous the way you're watching the TV right now. Tell me that was Queensland.
16-10.
Perfect. All over. Congratulations to the Queensland Maroons. Billy Slater, you are the man. I always said you were the man. Billy the Kid has delivered. Get the statue ready. It's going up. Game 1. The question is, if you can win away game 1, it's very rare you drop the series. So that puts us in, and say us.
Pole position.
I've always been a Queensland fan because of so many great Melbourne Storm players have come from Queensland, so I adopted them very early. Although I used to love the State of Origin clashes years ago, all the way through from some great players that have played through for New South Wales. But anyway.
Hang on, what were we talking about? Collingwood, Melbourne.
We were. Collingwood, Melbourne. Let's come back to that. So what I was saying is I was a little concerned, not so much about our backline. Everyone thinks our backline's half fallen apart, but I'm still a little bit worried about our forward line and kicking goals. You mentioned Lovey to me a couple of times that don't worry about the forwards, the middles. The mids are the ones that are going to kick the goals. I'm interested to hear whether you think that's still going to be the case come Monday.
Yep. Still back that in.
What changes?
Still back that in. You get Paddock now, you get your good mids back in there. Look, your mids have had 2 off weeks, to be honest, apart from Oliver. Petrarca, Langdon's been down. There's quite a few of your foot soldiers and the ones that I call player 12 to 22 who haven't been putting in as much as what they could be. So if they lift, I think they're still as good. Jesus.
Sorry, boys.
I still think that you're going to kick a win ball if they play the way that they should be. One thing they could try is Petrarca potentially forward a bit more if they're worried about opportunities. I think Benny Brown's starting to run his luck out a little bit here, and I can't see why Sam Wiedemann is labouring in the 2 still. I think back the kid in for the rest of this year to see if he's going to be not just a premiership player, but on your list for next year. I think you got to back Sam in at the expense of Ben Brown. McDonald's out, so they've got to try and rejig something. I don't mind Max going up forward, but that puts a lot of pressure on a second or third year player in Brown. So, I think I'll still back your mids in, mate. They'll be fine. They'll kick the score for you.
Yeah.
I think Melbourne's best, despite the events of the last 2 weeks, what's gone on this week. I think Melbourne's best, even with, obviously, as Lovey said, Tom McDonald out. I agree with Lovey. You've got to play Sam Wiedemann. I think Melbourne's best outplays Collingwood's best, as simple as that. Look, Collingwood have probably overachieved at the moment, and I don't say that in a smart-ass way. I think you've got to give credit to Fly McRae and the way he's gone about his first foray into coaching, and I think he's achieved what a lot of coaches struggle to get for the whole tenure of their coaching. The side seems to be playing for him, which is a good thing, and that's turned into results on the field for them. But I think if Melbourne play to their best, as Lovey said, your stars are your stars, like your Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, but it's your little blokes like your Spargos and Bowie who've probably been a little bit off over the last 2 weeks or so. If they get back to what they know, I think they beat Collingwood by 4 to 5 goals.
Yeah, look, I think the players we brought back 4 players, premiership players last week that were a little rusty, but still did a job. They'll be 1 week better for it. Like you mentioned, Melbourne's best is better. The concern I've got is we're a long way from our best as Cuz disappears. We'll bring him back. I'm glad had some riveting news for you, Cuz. I'm sure he's back. Righto, Cuz.
Still listening to this, blow my nose, boys. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Off camera. Thanks for muting yourself this time. As I mentioned, I think Melbourne's best. We all say that should smash Collingwood. The issue is, I think we're a long way from our best at the moment. So all I want is to see more than 2 quarters of effort. And I'm not saying the Demons weren't putting in effort, but it's got to start to click a little bit more. And I think what I started to see was the Melbourne of old bombing the ball back into 50, and that's not what we want to see. We've got such good ball kickers, especially left footers. We all know how dynamic a left footer can be, and can really hit a target inside 50. And obviously you've got to have the targets inside 50, but I think the lowering of the eyes to get that ball to the correct target instead of bombing it long, I think is the secret for this week. So definitely one out of the middle. But Max Gawn, I mean, he couldn't lead any better as a captain. He had an insane game last week as well, and now he's questioned everyone else. My issue I had during the week was Petrarca's comments on the radio the other day, and I know that gets blown out of context really quickly, but the comment around the lack of crowd. I mean, Melbourne's never had big crowds, but it was kind of an off-the-cuff comment. But I think, you know what, Track, why did you need to say that? You played in 2 years of COVID, for God's sake, with no crowd. Any crowd there's got to be a bonus. And if you're worrying about the crowd not getting you up, then you should be a little bit concerned for this week, because there's going to be about 80% Collingwood supporters there, given that it's a Collingwood home game as well. So...
Just quickly, boys, obviously more so you as a passionate Demon. Lovey, you did mention it. Is Ben Brown in your best 22? And does Tom McDonald's injury give him a spot without him having to perform, so to speak? Like, who's in the twos that could come up? Obviously, Wiedemann can come in for McDonald, but is Ben Brown in your best 22?
Lovey frozen.
No, my boy. Let you go first.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why I thought you were going to comment, Lovey. I'm just used to you let me go first.
That's why I asked the question again. I thought, okay, are they taking the mickey here? What's going on?
No.
I was looking at Lovey and I'm thinking he's frozen. Anyway, no, to be honest. He was last year.
Yep.
Wiedemann definitely should be given more of an opportunity. The issue is he can't seem to play. Wiedemann's can't seem to play in the same team as McDonald at the moment. And the concern around, obviously, they were hoping McDonald was going to be back, so they backed in Brown and McDonald as the combination. And that's not going to work. So I would honestly be running with Mitch Brown, and I'd also be running with Wiedemann and giving those two a crack for a couple of weeks. We've also got the young kid Van Ruin, and I think he should be given a crack now. Just a game here or there, especially in the middle part of the season. And I'm not against bringing Big Majak in for a game or two and throw him in the ruck a little bit, and occasionally a bit down back. So I think we've got a few there. There's no doubt about it. It's just a matter of, it's a very interesting one of what the decision's going to be to bring in. We seem to be, players we bring in, we seem to bring in a lot more of the Mosquito Fleet style, young, quick, multiple role kind of player. And I'm not certain that's the answer at the moment. We need a pretty solid structure, and I think our next 3 weeks will start to determine what that looks like for the back half of the year. So, interested in your thoughts on whether you've seen much of this kid, Mitch Brown, but I know he's absolutely lit up. He wasn't amazing, but he did have a couple of good contests. And as you know, you don't have to clunk the mark necessarily, and that's the issue I've had with Ben Brown. He hasn't been bringing the ball to ground either. He's kind of been ducking under it and lost his timing of his runs. And I think he just needs a bit of a tune-up in the twos.
Mitch Brown obviously came from Essendon. And a lot of where he's been, the clubs where he's been at, they speak of him very highly as a role player. Like, for a bloke who's been in the system for quite a while, he's actually very hard-working and he's a very good link that to play almost... He's tall enough to play key defender, but he almost plays as a high half forward at times, getting up the ground and taking the pressure off others. And during the supplement scandal, that's when he came to Essendon, he played and kicked goals on a regular basis. Yeah. So, look, if you speak to a lot of people, is he in your best 22? Probably not. But if you want a bloke to say, this is your role, Mitch, go and play it, he seems to be very good at doing that. Giving a contest, getting the ball to ground. Look, I think Ben Brown, I think the Ben Brown that you saw at North to the Ben Brown you see now, look, last year, good when he was getting the silver service with delivery, but I think whether sides have worked him out or the way he's getting the ball, well, I just think he's struggled a bit, and I think it's going to be hard for him to find a way to keep his spot.
Sure. Right, Lovey.
I think you can read the forward line. I still stand by that. And I think, what's the name of that curly-haired young fella you got without his front teeth? What's his name? Escapes me again.
Luke Jackson.
Yeah, Lukey Jackson. I mean, he's starting to become your most important man in the team because of the way back and forth. So, I would almost put him solely as a starting ruck right now. I'd have Maxie playing it forward. I'd have Wiedemann up around the forward line with Fritchie. And then that way you can isolate Max in ones a lot more. And then you got space for 3 mosquitoes. The thing with Wiedemann, he'll clunk you some marks, or he'll get it to ground. Your point about Benny Brown. I still think Tom McDonald's spot in that team is best down back as a third tall defender. He should not be playing forward. He's not. He doesn't. I don't think he quite gets the grasp of making the ball his. I think he needs the ball coming to him as a defender, like Lever does and like May does. I think he's one of those. So for me, you can assist with Max Gawn up forward in the whole game. Find me a defender that can actually beat him one-on-one. You can't. Not even Darcy. But I think you've been let down too, to be honest, a little bit with your small forwards. They've got to lift more than anything. Pickett's been quiet, in and out. How you get run down by a potato like Carton, I don't know. It's just those sort of... You turn them around and you start looking like the dominant team you once were again. So you're not that far away. I think you just need to be a bit more mobile as a forward line. And Wiedemann, Fritch in front of Gawn and 3 smalls, I think does it.
Yep. All right, boys. It's going to be an interesting weekend, no doubt. And we're off to a flyer on a Wednesday night with the Maroons getting home. So that's made me smile, that's for sure, as it is for you boys. So great to hear that Origin's back with a vengeance. Billy's done it. Front page of the paper. I bet you it's not tomorrow. I bet you they still find something else to put up there or put on the back page of the paper instead of rugby league. Like it should be. We've played rugby league in Melbourne for long enough to be able to honour what State of Origin looks like. Sadly, there's not a game in Melbourne. I wish there was.
I think it'll be on the front.
Righto. Front or back? Let's take a last option. Front page or back page or both?
Back page.
Coverage on the front page.
Okay. I'm hoping for both. So let's see what we end up with. And just a shout out again to Traps. We hope to have you on next week. And Davey Cosma, where are you, son? We want you back.
Mark Burke, same, mate.
Berkey, you're welcome anytime, mate. We've got 3 houses between us here. There's internet on at all of them. Feel free to come over, mate. We'd love to have you on reviewing some music again as we move into it. Well, we are heading into winter very quickly. If we're not already there, it's fresh enough at the moment. But
putting his bonfire together every 10 minutes, he's having to go out and get firewood. So they keep warm up in those hills. So good luck to him.
Yep.
And Traps is forever sick, mate. He's a Carlton supporter, so
yeah, true.
Boy.
Yep. He's taken the winter pill like a lot of the other Carlton players. They're struggling at the moment. So once again, a quick shout out for tomorrow night at the Brunswick Ballroom for RecLink, private function as well this week with the Cheeky Geezers and Gut Health, which is a ripping gig. That is Friday night, I think it is, and then Saturday night, Lukey Sinclair down at George Lane. So if you can get out and about, there's 3 we recommend. So do yourself a favour and check out this guy. Righto, legends.
It's lovely. Thank you very much.
We will talk soon.
May your news be good news and good night.
And let's hope we're hearing this.